And now, we bring you Killer Wives, episode 43. Pinky Posse. These are the case facts against Nora Ellis, who had her husband decapitated. Isn't trust a bitch? Bali, Indonesia, famous for some of the world's clearest waterways, the manta rays that swim freely, but also made famous for the murder of one Mr. Robert Ellis. Bali is one of the most visited natural tourist locations in the world, and especially at night. There one can find locals practicing the annual Bali Oka Oka festival in order to expel evil demons from towns and villages on the island. If you are a visitor to this custom, it may appear strange to you. I would imagine something similar to the musical group Houdini, who sang the song, "The Freaks Come Out at Night." How right the words of that song were, but I would also add that so do murderers and people who prepare to do evil. In particular, the murderers were simply hired novices in the art of taking a life for financial profit. No one can say for sure what drove Nora Ellis to elicit the accomplice of 7 people to murder her soulmate, but that is exactly what took place on the night of October the 24th, 2014. At the base of the Ayung River in a quiet cabana in a very exclusive portion of Bali, Mr. Robert Ellis was about to be murdered. The hired killers at her behest would surprise Robert in his kitchen, then assault and overpower him. They were then instructed to bind his legs and his wrist and lay him on the kitchen floor facing up. There, one of 5 men that was sent to attack him was given a kitchen knife by his wife of 25 years. This was that he would stab her husband to death. The attacker would use that knife to slash Robert's throat from ear to ear. Now, because this attacker was an ordinary citizen and not an accomplished murderer, it took him 3 massive slices to Robert's throat before Robert lay dead. To many, including her children, this would never make sense because it was her Australian-born husband who helped lift her up from poverty to wealth. He provided a standard of living that not only placed her in the 1 percentile of the island's residents, but allowed her to relax at the home poolside whenever she desired. After the murder, Nora Ellis then instructed the men to gather his body in a rolled mat and plastic and to dispose of him out in the middle of a distant rice field. It was then that she gave instructions to the 2 permanent housemaids that worked in the home to clean up the bloody mess that remained from the beheading of her own husband. Because these 2 maids freely participated in the destruction of Mrs. Nora, they too would be up for murder charges once the case went to trial. The following morning would find Nora living the life of Raleigh. You could see that she could care less that her husband was either dead or gone. The good thing about the entire situation was that the Ellis' 2 adult children were away in a foreign country getting their college education. days before the corpse of Australian businessman Robert Ellis was discovered. In that rice field, Noor would call their son Peter. He was about to start a job at Australian Post, and Noor was bursting with maternal pride. Peter would later on recant how the conversation still haunted him. She said, "I'm proud of you. Well done." Really motherly stuff. She was being a loving mother, and behind the scenes, she was plotting the murder of my father. She mentioned nothing on that phone call about the father or his death. The only way he found out what happened is when he was scrolling through his Facebook feed. At the time, CNN was reporting the breaking news. The body of an Australian had been found in a rice paddy in Bali. Peter says, I couldn't imagine it would have been my dad. But later his girlfriend Madison called. She had seen the 6 p.m. news and said, "I think it's your dad." Peter then tried desperately to get in contact with his mother, Noor. Peter says she wasn't answering calls, which was bizarre because she had her phone with her all the time. At the time, Peter said, "I thought something might have happened to her as well." The only reason CNN broke that story was that a few days after the murder, a worker in that rice paddy where Robert Ellis' body was discarded found his decomposing body. A mobile phone and a large map were found in close proximity to the body. Detective Wisnu Wardana said the body is believed to have been lying in a ditch for several days as it was in a state of decay. The rice paddy where the body was found lies between the popular coastal area of Kuta and the hillside town of Ubud. Detectives say there was a deep wound to the neck that had almost completely cut the head off. Police believe the mat found in the ditch was used to wrap the body and carry it to the rice paddy to be dumped. The police began their investigation with a search for clues, followed the next day by a visit to Robert's house. The deceased wife, Noor Ellis, would go to the police station on the Indonesian island to report that her husband had gone missing over that one particular weekend. A little too late for the police, though, for they detained her instead for questioning, partly due to the fact that she didn't report him missing from the start. During an intense police grilling, Noor admitted that she was behind the killing. Only in her version of the execution, she was not responsible for having him killed, but just having him roughed up a little. Both of Noor's sons and Robert's brother flew to the island to watch their mother stand trial for the death of their father. The oldest of Peter's sons recalls that there were a few cracks in the Ellis marriage, but not many. Peter noticed his parents were sleeping in separate rooms when he visited in September of the previous year. He remembers Noor didn't accompany them on family outings, which was unusual. Kelvin Ellis, Robert's son from his first marriage, also thought his father seemed a bit distant during a family holiday in New Zealand in June. But there was nothing remarkable. If anything, Robert's brother David assumed their relationship was just going through the inevitable readjustment period when children have flown the coop. When David, who lives in Perth, Australia, celebrated Robert's birthday with the couple that April, he asked Robert's advice about buying a villa in Bali. He too had an Indonesian wife. Robert explained that under Indonesian law, foreigners can't own property, so it was all in Noor's name. He stated to me a few times if their marriage had broken up, he wouldn't have gotten another marriage. Arriving on island hurt twice as much for the boys as the death because no one was ever informed by the Indonesian police or the Australian consulate in Bali. He said, "I rang the consulate. They just gave us a brochure with some names of funeral directors and lawyers." A few days later, Noor confessed to the police her role in Robert's death. 5 hitmen were also arrested, along with 2 housemaids who are alleged to have kept the couple's dog quiet during the murder. One unique measure of the Bali court system is that they make the culprits act out the crime that they have committed for the public. Here you can see all the culprits that had him killed act out their crime, and they make them begin with what started it, making a swear with their pinkies. This is why the case became the pinky swear. As I said before, Robert's throat had been slit in the kitchen of the Sanua villa. His body was wrapped in plastic and then dumped in a rice field. Here are some images of the couple's home. It was said that what went wrong for Noah was they were supposed to suffocate him and make it disappear. But when they cut his throat, the blood was instantly noticed because there was a lot of it, David says. Noah's son still struggled to make sense of it. She could have walked out of the door. Everything was under her name. Dad couldn't touch any of it, John says. For David, it is something impossible to rationalize. He says Noah was right into the darkness and the dark side of the occult. An adherence to black magic is common in Indonesia, where many believe in paranormal powers. Even President Suharto consulted dukun, the Indonesian Malay term for shaman. Noah says she had tried to place a voodoo curse on Robert's person. His body was found scattered with US dollar bills on top of it. David says there's a belief that if someone picks up the money, the bad luck will be transferred to them. Noah was a bit like a crackhead down a deep hole. She probably got so angry and so vengeful she didn't even think about the proper way of doing things. That's the only way you can explain the money on top of the body. There's no other way to explain that. Noah's defense team insisted she was perfectly innocent. They say she did not give the order for Robert to be murdered. The implements Noah gave the hitman, she said, were a pillow and a towel. Her attorneys insisted that she did not cause the stabbing wounds that killed him. She only instructed to have her problem with her husband handled. But as in death, worse than in life, men are demonized in court. The defense painted Robert as a womanizer who deprived Noah of money from their business enterprises. She claimed he had not given her enough money and even took the money from their son's schooling. Noah was reported as saying because his attitude didn't change, I couldn't stand it anymore. Noah had tried to get the boys to corroborate this evidence, but they refused. They say she was neither poor nor a victim of domestic violence. It was said that Noah had a stack of credit cards 2 inches thick that Dad would have paid for. She's got piles of jewelry, shoes, the whole lot. Peter says he will never forget Noah telling him, I'm the only one you've got now, so now it's time to help me. After court, she told everyone she wants us to live together as one big happy family. The person who has ruined your life and taken away everything from you, she can't ask forgiveness from us because that is not going to happen. And these are words from her own son. Under the forfeiture law in Australia, a murderer cannot benefit from the will of the victim. This is known as the Slayer statute in the United States. However, there is no equivalent law in Indonesia that will prevent Noah from accessing Robert's money. Although Noah is in prison, she has been fighting her own sons to keep the inheritance away that their father would like for them to have. Tracing the couple's property assets will also be next to impossible because they are in Noah's name. The boy's father, Robert, was a hard worker, but when his sons came to visit, he would stay in Bali and telecommute rather than travel to Jakarta. It was picture perfect, he said. Me and Dad would go fishing, go out for dinners. There is no point in being here if Dad is not around. He said, whenever I come here, I expect Dad to be at the airport and to give me a big hug. David recalls a cheerful bugger. He knew the names of all the street vendors on his 6 a.m. walks. He had a characteristic way of standing, laughing, and talking. At the end of her trial, Noah was sentenced to 12 years in prison for the contract killing of her husband. It was a few years less than the term demanded by prosecutors and far less than the price the couple's children wanted their mother to pay for their father's brutal murder, a crime that carries a maximum sentence of the death penalty. These days, Peter and his brother John refer to their mother in the past tense, 100%. They said, "It is like she is dead." But Noor is still alive. She is in a fetid cell in Bali's Kirkobokan prison, a few kilometers and an entire world away from the sumptuous Sanur Villa where she lived with Robert. For Killer Wives, this is Charles Rivers. Thank you for joining us.